My husband forced me to kneel and confess to an affair I didn't commit. You can't trust people with no roots, my mother-in-law hissed. As my husband raised his belt, I silently pressed play on the TV, revealing his mother and brother-in-law in their dirty little secret. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. The whistle of the leather belt cutting through the frigid air was a sound I will never forget. It sounded like a blade slicing through every remaining shred of grace and justice in that house. It was the most sacred night of the year, Christmas Eve. The scent of roast turkey and pine needles still hung heavy in the air, mingling with the expensive perfume my mother-in-law, Dolores, wore like armor. Just minutes ago, the house had been filled with the laughter of uncles and cousins, the clinking of crystal wine glasses, and the sound of children running through the yard. I had been in the kitchen, as I had been for every major holiday for the last 5 years, arranging the cranberry sauce and making sure the gravy didn't clump. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked into the living room, exhausted but hopeful. I looked at my husband, Stuart. He was standing by the fireplace, looking handsome in his new plaid shirt, laughing at a joke his Uncle Raymond had told. For a fleeting second, I felt that familiar flutter in my chest. I thought that as long as he was happy, as long as this family was at peace, all my suffering, all the times I bit my tongue, would be worth it. But that peace was a fragile illusion, shattered by a single notification sound from my phone, which I had foolishly left on the coffee table while I was washing dishes. It was a text from my boss, Mr. Davis. He is 60 years old, a kind man who treats me like a daughter. The message was simple: Merry Christmas, Valerie. Thank you for your hard work this year. Best wishes to you and Stuart. A completely harmless message. But in the toxic ecosystem of this family, harmless things were often weaponized. Stuart picked up the phone. I saw his face transform. The kind, slightly vacuous smile disappeared, replaced by a cold, twisted expression that made him look dangerously like his mother. Without asking me a single question, he walked to the center of the room. The chatter died down. The Christmas carols playing softly in the background suddenly seemed mocking. Everyone, listen up, Stuart announced, his voice shaking with a rage that felt disproportionate, almost performative. I have something to say. He held up my phone like it was a piece of evidence in a murder trial. Valerie, get over here. My heart started racing, a cold dread pooling in my stomach. I stepped forward. Stuart, what is it? Is something wrong? He threw the phone onto the coffee table. It landed with a crack that echoed in the silent room. Explain yourself, he spat. Who is the son of a bitch texting you at this hour? You've been cheating on me behind my back, haven't you? I froze. The accusation was so absurd, so far from the truth, that for a moment I couldn't speak. I looked around the room. The aunts and uncles were staring at me with wide eyes. What are you talking about? I stammered. It's Mr. Davis. My boss. He just sent a Christmas greeting. Read it, Stuart. But facts didn't matter. Not tonight. My explanation was too weak against his ignited anger. And then, like a shark smelling blood, my mother-in-law, Dolores, stepped in. She was sitting in her high-backed armchair like a queen on a throne, swirling her red wine. I knew it, she said, her voice sharp as a razor. What kind of boss sends a message to another man's wife on Christmas Eve? I told you, Stuart. I told you from the day you brought her home from that orphanage. You can't trust people with no roots. It's in her blood to be ungrateful. Mom, please, I begged, looking at her. It's just a holiday greeting. Don't you dare speak to me, she hissed. My sister-in-law, Brenda, was standing in the corner. She looked pale and tired, as always. Beside her was her husband, Travis, my brother-in-law. Travis was the golden boy of the family, the successful businessman, the one Dolores adored. He shook his head, looking at me with fake pity. Valery, Travis said, his voice smooth and condescending. If you've done something wrong, just admit it. Don't embarrass Stuart further. A man has his pride. I haven't done anything, I cried, turning back to Stuart. Honey, look at me. You know me. I go to work, I come home. I cook your meals. I wash your clothes. When would I have time to cheat? Stuart didn't look at me. He stared at the wall, his chest heaving. And then, he did something that made the blood drain from my face. He walked to the corner of the living room where an old leather belt hung on a display hook. It was his grandfather's belt, a relic the family kept to symbolize discipline and tradition. He took it down. The leather was thick and dry. Kneel, Stuart said through gritted teeth. What? I whispered. I said kneel, he screamed, raising the belt. He snapped it. Whack. The sound was terrifying. Kneel before our ancestors, before my mother, and confess your sin. Tell me, how many times have you slept with him? Did you do it in our bed? I took a horrified step back. My hands were trembling uncontrollably. This wasn't the man who promised to protect me. This was a stranger. A monster created by his mother's whispers and his own insecurity. Stuart, stop, I said, my voice trembling. You're scaring me. Put the belt down. Still making excuses? Stuart roared. He took a step toward me, raising the belt higher. I'm going to beat the truth out of you if I have to. No one moved. No one intervened. My mother-in-law watched with a satisfied smirk, as if she was watching her favorite soap opera and the villain was finally getting punished. The relatives were either too scared or too morbidly fascinated to stop him. I looked at Stuart. I saw the weakness in his eyes masked by violence. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. The fear didn't vanish, but it was overtaken by a cold, hard resolve. The love I had held for him, the patience I had practiced for 5 years, evaporated instantly. He wanted a confession? He wanted a show? Fine, I thought. I'll give you a show. I stopped backing away. I stood tall, my hand sliding slowly into my coat pocket. My fingers brushed against the cold metal of a small USB drive. It contained a truth far more damaging than any lie they could invent about me. You want the truth, Stuart? I asked, my voice cutting through the tension. Kneel, he shouted again, his arm shaking. I ignored him. I turned my back on him and walked toward the massive 85-inch television mounted above the fireplace. The room went deathly silent, a different kind of silence than before. It was the silence of confusion. They expected me to beg. They expected me to drop to my knees and plead for mercy, to accept the role of the sinner so they could feel superior. By walking away from Stuart, I had broken the script. Where are you going? Dolores barked, sitting up straighter. Get back here and take your punishment. Valery, don't make this worse, Travis warned, though I detected a slight tremor of unease in his voice. I didn't answer. My hand didn't tremble at all as I reached the side of the television. I found the USB port and inserted the drive. The little blue light on the drive blinked, a tiny beacon of the chaos I was about to unleash. I picked up the remote control from the mantel. It felt heavy in my hand, like a weapon. I turned to face them. The light from the screen cast long shadows across the room. I must have looked terrifyingly calm because Stuart lowered the belt slightly, his brow furrowed. Emily, what are you doing? Stuart asked, his voice wavering. Is that photos of the affair? Are you confessing? I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was a smile where despair had solidified into stone. You asked for the truth, Stuart, I said softly. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried to every corner of the room. You wanted to know about betrayal. You wanted to know about dirty secrets happening right under your nose. You asked if there is anything worse than cheating. I looked directly at Dolores. Her eyes widened slightly. Is there anything worse than being humiliated, falsely accused, and threatened with a belt by your beloved husband in front of the whole family on Christmas Eve? I asked. Tell me, Mother, is there? Dolores slammed her wineglass down. How dare you speak to me like that? Stuart, hit her. Beat that shameless woman into shape. Do it, Stuart. Travis yelled, stepping forward as if to grab me. Too late, I whispered. My thumb pressed the play button. The screen flickered from black to a crisp, high-definition video. The sound system, which Travis had bragged about installing just last month, kicked in with crystal clarity. It wasn't a sad music video. It wasn't a slideshow of my life. It was this very living room. The angle was high, looking down from the corner near the ceiling. The timestamp in the corner of the video showed a date from just 3 days ago. On the screen, 2 figures were on the leather sofa, the same sofa where Uncle Raymond was currently sitting, causing him to jump up as if he had been burned. The woman in the video had her hair up in a high bun. She was wearing a silk robe that was slipping off her shoulders. It was undeniably Dolores. And the man embracing her, kissing her neck with a familiarity that made my stomach churn, was not a stranger. It was Travis. My brother-in-law. Stuart's sister's husband. The video was raw. Uncensored. The sounds of their heavy breathing and the wet noises of their kissing filled the room, amplifying the horror 1,000 times over. Oh, Travis, you're so much of a better man than Stuart, the Dolores in the video moaned. My son is so useless. Just like his father. And my wife is a bore, the Travis on the screen replied, his hands roaming over my mother-in-law's body. I only married Brenda for the inheritance. But you're the fire. The real room plunged into a paralysis of horror. The only sound was the grotesque audio coming from the TV. Stuart dropped the belt. It hit the floor with a dull thud, signaling the end of his authority. He stared at the screen, his mouth open, his eyes bulging as if his brain couldn't process the visual information. Dolores let out a strangled gasp, her face draining of all color until she looked like a corpse with heavy makeup. She tried to stand, but her legs gave way, and she collapsed back into her chair. Travis froze. He looked like a deer in headlights, knowing that the semi-truck of consequences was about to flatten him. I looked at Brenda. She was standing like a statue, tears streaming silently down her face, staring at the screen where her husband and her mother were engaged in the ultimate betrayal. Before the shock wore off, before the screaming started, I looked straight at Stuart, then turned my gaze to you, the listener. If you are still listening to this point, please help me by liking this video and commenting the number 1 below. Let me know that you are with me, that you see the injustice I faced. Your support tells me I am not alone in this battle. Please, comment number 1 so I can recognize you, and now, listen as I tell you what happened next in this nightmare. To understand why I was standing there, holding the remote like a detonator, you have to understand who I was before that night. You have to understand why I stayed for 5 years. I wasn't always a vengeful woman. I grew up in the foster care system. I was bounced from house to house, never staying long enough to paint a wall or call a room my own. I learned early on that love was conditional. If you were quiet, if you were helpful, if you made yourself invisible, you might get to stay a little longer. I carried that lesson into adulthood like a scar. When I met Stuart 6 years ago, he seemed like my savior. I was working 2 jobs to put myself through night school, exhausted and lonely. Stuart was charming. He was a golden boy from a good family. He opened doors for me. He brought me flowers. He defended me once when a drunk guy at a bar tried to grab my arm. I'll always keep you safe, Valerie, he had said, his eyes so sincere. That promise meant everything to me. I thought I had finally found my home. I ignored the red flags. I ignored how he would call his mother 3 times a day. I ignored how he would change his opinion on a movie if Dolores said she didn't like it. After we got married, the dynamic shifted subtly. It wasn't overnight. It was a slow erosion. "Valerie, Mom thinks you shouldn't wear that dress. It's a bit cheap looking," he would say. Or, "Valerie, Mom says we need to save money, so maybe we skip your birthday dinner this year." I worked as a paralegal at a respectable firm. I made a decent salary, better than Stuart's, actually, as he worked a mid-level sales job at a company his uncle owned. But in that house, my money was our money, and Stuart's money was his money, which usually meant money to impress his mother. I paid the mortgage. I paid for the groceries. I paid for the vacations Dolores insisted on tagging along for. Yet, I was treated like the poor orphan who should be grateful for the scraps from the master's table. "You have no pedigree," Dolores told me once while I was scrubbing her kitchen floor before a party. "Stuart married down. We just tolerate you because you're useful." I took it. I swallowed my pride because I was terrified of being alone again. I convinced myself that this was just how families were, complicated, messy. I thought if I just tried harder, if I cooked better, if I cleaned more, eventually they would love me. But the dynamic in the family was twisted. Dolores was the sun, and everyone else was a planet orbiting her, terrified of falling out of gravity. Travis, my brother-in-law, was the favorite satellite. He was slick, handsome in a greasy way, and knew exactly how to flatter Dolores. He brought her expensive wine, often paid for with money he borrowed from Stuart and never paid back. Brenda, Stuart's sister, was the scapegoat. She was quiet, anxious, and constantly criticized by Dolores for her weight, her parenting, her housekeeping. I felt a kinship with Brenda, but she was too afraid of her mother to ever ally with me. About a year ago, things started to feel wrong. Not just toxic, but sinister. I noticed the way Dolores looked at Travis. It wasn't the way a mother-in-law looks at a son-in-law. She would giggle like a schoolgirl when he was around. She would cook his favorite meals, ignoring what her own children wanted. At family dinners, I would catch them exchanging glances. Long, lingering looks. Once, under the table, I thought I saw Travis's foot rubbing against Dolores's leg, but I told myself I was crazy. Who would think such a thing? It was disgusting. It was incestuous in spirit, if not by blood. "You're just jealous because Mom likes Travis more than you," Stuart said when I tentatively brought up that they seemed very close. "I'm not jealous, Stuart. It's just weird. She bought him a $500 watch for his birthday. She gave you a pair of socks. That's because Travis appreciates fine things," Stuart snapped. "Stop trying to drive a wedge between them." So I went back to being silent. I went back to being the invisible wife. But the feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. It was a heavy, cold stone in my stomach telling me that the ground beneath my feet was rotten. And then came the incident with the diamond ring. That was the moment the blindfold didn't just slip, it was ripped off. It was exactly 1 month before Christmas. Thanksgiving weekend. The entire family was gathered at Dolores's house, just like always. Dolores had a vintage diamond ring, a family heirloom she claimed was worth $20,000. She wore it constantly, flashing it in everyone's face, using it as a symbol of her status. After dinner, while I was clearing the table, because the men were watching football and Brenda was tending to her sick child, Dolores started screaming from the bathroom. "My ring! My ring is gone!" She came running out, holding her hand up. I took it off to wash my hands, and now it's gone. Someone stole it. Everyone froze. The accusations started flying, but they settled very quickly on one target. Me. "Valerie was the last one to use the downstairs bathroom," Travis said, pointing a finger at me while sipping his brandy. I saw her come out right before dinner. I didn't touch your ring, I said, stunned. I went in there to wash my face. I didn't see any ring. Liar! Dolores shrieked. She marched up to me, her face twisted. You've always eyed my jewelry. You think because you grew up with nothing, you deserve to take what's ours. Stuart, I said, turning to my husband, pleading with my eyes. Tell them. Tell them I wouldn't do this. I make my own money. I don't need to steal. Stuart looked at his mother, then at Travis, and finally at me. I expected him to defend me. I expected him to say, my wife is honest. Instead, he looked down at his shoes and said, Valery, if you took it, just give it back. Mom won't press charges. My heart shattered. It broke more completely than if he had slapped me. He didn't trust me. After 5 years of sleeping in the same bed, sharing a life, he thought I was a common thief. I didn't take it, I said, my voice trembling with rage. Search her bag, Dolores commanded. And Stuart did. My husband grabbed my purse and dumped it out onto the dining room table in front of everyone. Tampons, lipstick, receipts, my wallet, my private life scattered for their amusement. He dug through the pockets. He patted down my coat. He found nothing. It's not here, Stuart muttered, looking almost disappointed that he couldn't solve the problem by sacrificing me. She probably hid it in her car, Dolores sniffed. Or she swallowed it. I know she took it. Who else would? Brenda is too stupid to steal, and Travis is family. I stood there, humiliated, my belongings strewn across the table. I realized then that I wasn't a wife to Stuart. I was a convenience. And to Dolores, I was a villain she needed to make herself feel superior. That night, we drove home in silence. Stuart tried to touch my hand, but I pulled away. Mom is just upset, he said weakly. The ring meant a lot to her. You searched my bag, Stuart, I said. You searched me like a criminal. I had to clear your name, he argued. No. You had to appease your mother. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replay the humiliation. And then, a thought occurred to me. A dark, nagging thought. Travis had been in the kitchen right before Dolores went to the bathroom. He had been complaining earlier about cash flow problems with his business. And Dolores. Dolores was so quick to blame me. Was it a setup? Or was something else going on? I needed to know. I realized that if I stayed in this marriage, I was walking on a minefield. Next time, it wouldn't be a missing ring. It would be something worse. They would frame me for something that could send me to jail, or they would destroy my reputation so thoroughly I'd lose my job. I needed protection. I needed eyes in that house. That Monday, I didn't go to work. I went to a spy shop in the city. But before I bought anything, I did something even smarter. I made an appointment with a divorce attorney. Not just any attorney, but Linda Thorne, a woman known in our city as the Shark. I sat in Linda's office, shaking. I don't know if I want a divorce yet, I told her. But they accused me of stealing. I need to know what's happening in that house. I want to install a hidden camera. Linda looked at me over her glasses. Valery, listen to me carefully. You cannot record audio in a private place where people have an expectation of privacy if you aren't part of the conversation, depending on state laws. However, you can install a nanny cam in common areas for security purposes to monitor the safety of the home, especially if you suspect theft or intruders. But you have to be very careful. If you use it for blackmail, you go to jail. If you use it to protect yourself, that's a different story. I just want the truth, I said. Then get the truth, Linda said. But be prepared. The truth usually hurts like hell. I left her office with a plan. I wasn't just the victim anymore. I was going to be the investigator. I bought a high-end hidden camera disguised as a coat hook. It looked exactly like the brass hooks Dolores had in her hallway and living room. It was motion-activated, 4K resolution, and uploaded directly to a secure cloud server. The tricky part was installing it. I needed a reason to be in Dolores's house alone. Fate, it seemed, was on my side. Or maybe it was the devil. 2 days later, Dolores called Stuart to say she needed someone to let the cable guy in on Tuesday because she and Brenda were going shopping, and Travis was busy. Valerie can do it, Stuart volunteered me without asking. She can take a long lunch. Fine, Dolores grunted. Tell her not to steal the silverware while she's there. I agreed. It was the perfect opportunity. That Tuesday, my heart was hammering against my ribs as I unlocked Dolores's front door. The house was silent. It smelled of lemon polish and old secrets. I had about an hour before the cable guy was scheduled to arrive, but I knew Dolores's shopping trips could be unpredictable. If she forgot her credit card or decided she hated her outfit, she could be back in 20 minutes. I moved quickly. I had brought a screwdriver and a small bag of tools. I chose the spot carefully. There was a row of coat hooks near the entrance to the living room. It provided a perfect, wide-angle view of the entire living area, the sofa, the fireplace, and the entrance to the kitchen. I unscrewed the existing brass hook. My hands were sweating, making the screwdriver slip. Calm down, Valerie, I told myself. You're just fixing a hook. You're helping. I replaced it with the camera hook. It was indistinguishable from the others. I was just tightening the last screw when I heard the sound of a car door slamming outside. I froze. I rushed to the window and peeked through the curtains. It was Dolores's car. Panic surged through me. She wasn't supposed to be back for hours. Why was she here? I heard the key in the lock. I was still standing on a dining chair, the screwdriver in my hand, right under the camera. If she walked in and saw me messing with the fixtures, she would know. She was paranoid enough to check. I shoved the screwdriver into my pocket and jumped down from the chair, grabbing a dust rag from the side table just as the door swung open. Dolores walked in, looking flustered. She stopped when she saw me. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her eyes narrowing. I was just dusting while I waited for the cable guy, I lied, my voice breathless. There was a cobweb up there near the hooks. Dolores looked at the chair, then at the hooks, then at me. Her gaze was piercing. For a second, I thought I was caught. I thought she would see the tiny lens, or notice the hook was slightly shinier than the others. "Since when do you clean my house without being asked?" she sneered. "You never lift a finger unless I scream at you." "I'm trying, Dolores," I said, lowering my head submissively. I wanted to be helpful. She huffed, seemingly accepting the explanation because it fed into her narrative that I was her servant. "Well, don't just stand there. Put the chair back." I forgot my checkbook. "Brenda is waiting in the car." She marched past me, into the kitchen, grabbed her checkbook from the counter, and marched back out. She didn't even look at the hooks again. "The cable guy better not track mud on my rug," she warned before slamming the door shut. I waited until her car drove away before I let out a breath. My knees were shaking so hard I had to sit down. I pulled out my phone and checked the app. The feed was live. Crystal clear picture. I could see the living room perfectly. "Got you," I whispered. For the next few weeks, I checked the footage periodically. Mostly, it was boring. Dolores watching TV. Dolores yelling at Brenda on the phone. Stuart coming over to fix things for her. But then, 3 days before Christmas, I got a motion alert on my phone while I was at work. It was 2 p.m. Stuart was at work. Brenda was picking up her kids. Dolores was supposed to be at her bridge club. I opened the app, expecting to see the housekeeper. Instead, I saw Travis walk in. He didn't knock. He had a key. A few seconds later, Dolores walked into the frame. She was wearing that silk robe I mentioned earlier. She walked right up to Travis and kissed him. Not a friendly peck. A deep, passionate kiss. I sat at my desk at the law firm, my hand over my mouth, stifling a scream. I watched as they moved to the sofa. I watched, and I recorded everything. But it wasn't just the sex that destroyed me. It was the conversation afterward. They were lying there, entangled, and Travis laughed. God, you're tight, D. Better than Brenda. She's let herself go since the kid. Brenda is a cow, Dolores said about her own daughter. But we need her. We need Stuart's dad's trust fund that opens up for the grandkids. That's the only reason I let you marry her. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just an affair. It was a conspiracy. What about Valery? Travis asked. She's sniffing around. She looked at me funny the other day. Valery is a nuisance, Dolores spat. She's too smart for her own good. That business with the ring rattled her, but she's still here. We need to get rid of her, Travis. Stuart needs a wife who listens, or better yet, he needs to be single so his salary comes back to me. Valery is controlling his money too much. Maybe we can plant something on her, Travis suggested. Drugs? Or maybe we just make Stuart think she's cheating. He's so insecure, he'll believe anything you tell him. I'm working on it, Dolores said. I've been dropping hints to Stuart that she's flirting with her boss. He's already paranoid. By Christmas, I'll have him ready to kick her out. I closed the laptop, trembling with a mixture of rage and vindication. They were planning to destroy me. They were gaslighting Stuart to end our marriage so Dolores could control his finances again. I wiped my tears. I didn't cry for long. I called Linda, my lawyer. I have it, I said. I have everything. Good, Linda said. Don't say a word. Wait for them to strike. Let them dig their own grave. And then, Valery, bury them. And that brings us back to Christmas Eve. Back to the moment I pressed play. The video on the massive TV screen continued to play. In the silent living room, the voices of Dolores and Travis were booming, echoing off the walls like the voice of God passing judgment. On the screen, they were now dressing. The intimacy of the act was gone, replaced by the cold calculation of their plotting. When are you going to ask Stuart for that loan? The video Dolores asked, tying her robe. Tonight, video Travis replied, zipping his pants. I'll tell him the business has a cash flow issue. He'll write the check if you tell him to. I'll tell him, Dolores said. I'll say it's for the family honor. He's such a mama's boy, he'd sell his kidney if I asked him to. In the real living room, Stuart let out a sound that was half sob, half retch. He was hearing his own mother, the woman he worshipped, the woman he beat his wife for, calling him a pathetic mama's boy. And Brenda? Video Travis asked. She's asking questions about the bank accounts. Ignore her, Dolores said. She's weak. She won't do anything. Just threaten to leave her and take the kid. She'll fold. In the living room, Brenda let out a high-pitched keening noise. She crumpled to the floor, clutching her chest. The video ended. The screen went black. I turned around to face them. The silence was gone now, replaced by the heavy, suffocating pressure of the aftermath. Stuart was staring at his mother. His face was wet with tears and snot. Mom? You, and Travis? And you called me. Dolores was shaking. But then, the shock turned into something else. Survival instinct. Pure, unadulterated malice. She realized her mask was gone, so she decided to become the monster fully. "It's fake!" Dolores screamed, jumping up. Her voice was shrill, cracking. "She faked it. It's that AI technology. Deep fake. She's trying to frame me." She pointed a trembling finger at me. "You evil bitch. You orchestrated this. You seduced Travis and forced him to pose for this." Travis, seeing a lifeline, latched onto it immediately. "Yes. Yes. It's fake. Or she drugged me. I don't remember this. She must have drugged us." "Drugged you?" I laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. "I drugged you and forced you to talk about stealing Stuart's money and gaslighting him? I drugged you to make you say Brenda is a cow?" "Shut up!" Travis roared. His face was purple. He looked around, his eyes wild. He saw the carving knife on the turkey platter. The atmosphere in the room shifted from shock to danger instantly. Travis grabbed the knife. "Turn it off! Give me that drive!" He lunged toward me. "Valery, run!" Brenda screamed from the floor. I didn't run. I stood my ground. "Take one more step, Travis, and you go to jail for assault on top of everything else." But Travis wasn't thinking. He was a cornered rat. He raised the knife. Suddenly, a body slammed into him. It wasn't security. It wasn't a police officer. It was Stuart. My husband, the man who had threatened to beat me 5 minutes ago, tackled Travis. They crashed into the coffee table, sending the turkey platter and the wine glasses shattering onto the floor. "You slept with my mother!" Stuart screamed, punching Travis in the face. "You sick bastard! You slept with my mother!" It was a chaotic brawl. Gravy and glass were everywhere. Travis dropped the knife, trying to shield his face. Dolores was screaming, "Stop! Stuart, stop hurting him. He's fragile." That was the final nail. Even now, seeing her lover beaten by her son, she defended the lover. Stuart froze, his fist raised. He looked up at his mother. "He's fragile? He's sleeping with you, Mom. He's married to Brenda. And you plan to ruin Valery? You made me." He looked at me. For the first time that night, he really looked at me. He saw the wife he had betrayed. He saw the belt still lying on the floor where he had dropped it. Shame washed over him so visibly it looked like physical pain. "Valery," he whispered. Don't," I said coldly. "Don't you dare speak to me." I pulled my phone out. I have already sent a copy of this video to my lawyer. And I have set a timer. If I don't check in within 10 minutes, she sends it to everyone. Your business partners, Travis. Your church group, Dolores. Everyone. Dolores gasped. "You wouldn't." "Try me," I said. "Now, get away from me." The living room was a disaster zone. The Christmas tree had been knocked askew in the scuffle, ornaments shattered on the floor like colorful shrapnel. Travis was bleeding from the nose, groaning on the carpet. Stuart was kneeling amidst the wreckage, his expensive shirt stained with cranberry sauce and blood, looking at his hands as if they didn't belong to him. Dolores was hyperventilating, clutching her chest, playing the heart attack card she always used when she lost control of a situation. "My heart! Someone call 911. She's killing me!" Dolores wailed. "Stop acting, Mom," Brenda said. Her voice was weak, but it was there. She stood up, wiping her tears. She walked over to Travis and looked down at him. "Get up. You make me sick." Travis looked up, eyes swelling. Babe, listen, it was the stress, she manipulated me. Slap. Brenda slapped him. It wasn't a hard slap, but it was significant. Don't call me babe. And don't ever touch me again. The guests, the aunts, uncles, and cousins, were finally reacting. Some were filming with their phones, unable to look away from the train wreck. Others were hurriedly putting on their coats, desperate to escape the blast radius of the scandal. This is disgraceful, Aunt Margaret muttered, clutching her purse. On Christmas Eve. I'm leaving, Uncle Raymond announced. He was the patriarch of the family, the only one Dolores somewhat respected. He walked over to Stuart. Get up, boy. Have some dignity. Stuart stood up unsteadily. He looked at me. He took a step toward me, his hands out, pleading. Valery, please. I didn't know. You have to believe me. I was brainwashed. She told me you were cheating. I was crazy with jealousy because I love you so much. Love? I scoffed, stepping back to maintain distance. You call that love? You are going to beat me with a belt, Stuart. You made me kneel. That's not love. That's ownership. And you don't own me. I'm sorry. I'll make it up to you. We can fix this. We'll go to counseling. I'll cut them off, he gestured wildly to his mother and Travis. I'll throw them out. You can't throw them out, Stuart, I said calmly. This is your mother's house. And you are just a guest here, just like I was. But unlike you, I'm leaving. No! Don't go! Stuart fell to his knees again, grabbing the hem of my coat. It was pathetic. The man who had been a terrifying giant 10 minutes ago was now a weeping child. I can't live without you. You do everything for me. Who will handle the bills? Who will cook? Please, Val. I looked down at him with pure disgust. That's exactly it, Stuart. You don't miss me. You miss the maid. You miss the accountant. You miss the punching bag. I kicked his hand away. Valery! Dolores shrieked, suddenly recovering from her heart attack. You ruin my Christmas, you humiliate us, and now you're leaving my son? You ungrateful orphan trash. I should have left you in the gutter. I turned to her one last time. You didn't pick me out of the gutter, Dolores. I climbed out of it myself. And tonight, I'm climbing out of the sewer that is your family. I grabbed my purse. I walked to the door. The cold air hit my face as I opened it, refreshing and clean compared to the rotting stench of the house. I'll see you in court, I said without looking back. I walked to my car, the snow crunching under my boots. Behind me, I could still hear the screaming, Dolores yelling at Stuart, Stuart sobbing, Travis groaning. I got into my car, locked the doors, and started the engine. My hands were shaking now, the adrenaline fading, replaced by a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. But as I drove away, watching the Christmas lights of that house of horrors fade in my rearview mirror, I felt something I hadn't felt in 5 years. I was free. But the war wasn't over. Oh no. I knew them. I knew Dolores and Stuart. They wouldn't let me walk away with their secrets and their money. They would come after me. They would try to destroy me before I could destroy them. I gripped the steering wheel. Bring it on, I whispered to the empty car. I drove straight to a motel on the outskirts of town. I didn't go to a friend's house, I didn't want to endanger anyone else. I checked in under a fake name, just to be safe. I sat on the lumpy bed, staring at the wall. My phone was blowing up. 50 missed calls from Stuart. 20 text messages ranging from I love you to you bitch, pick up. I turned the phone off. I had won the battle of Christmas Eve. But the war for my freedom, for my assets, and for my dignity was just beginning. And I had one more card to play. A card involving a man named Mr. Henderson, a man who hated Dolores almost as much as I did. But that is a story for the next part. The silence of the motel room was deafening, but the noise on my phone was a cacophony of hate. I thought leaving the house meant leaving the war zone, but I was wrong. I had simply retreated from the front lines to a bunker, and the enemy was now launching airstrikes. That first night in the motel was the longest of my life. The room smelled of stale cigarette smoke and lemon disinfectant, a combination that made my stomach turn. I sat on the edge of the lumpy mattress, still wearing my coat, staring at the door as if I expected Stuart to kick it down at any moment. Every time a car door slammed in the parking lot outside, I flinched. I was 32 years old, a professional woman, and I was hiding in a cheap motel like a fugitive. I didn't sleep. I watched the digital clock flip numbers until the sun began to bleed through the thin curtains. The next morning, I woke up to a barrage of notifications. My hands trembled as I unlocked my phone. It started with a Facebook post. Not just any post, but a manifesto written by Dolores, or rather, dictated by Dolores and polished by whatever crisis management PR firm Travis could afford before his funds froze. It is with a heavy heart, the post read, accompanied by a photo of Dolores looking frail and teary-eyed in a hospital bed, a photo I knew was from her gallbladder surgery 3 years ago. I ask for prayers. My family was attacked on Christmas Eve by a mentally unstable woman who used deepfake technology to blackmail us. My daughter-in-law, Valery, has been suffering from delusions and drug dependency. She tried to extort money from us, and when we refused, she created vile, fake videos to destroy our reputation. Please, respect our privacy as we help her get the treatment she needs. I gasped, the air leaving my lungs. Deep fakes? Drug dependency? The audacity was breathtaking. The comments were a landslide of misplaced sympathy. Stay strong, Dolores. The devil works hard, but mothers work harder. I always knew there was something off about her. She never smiled enough at church. Deepfakes are scary. Hope she goes to jail. Drug addiction is a tragedy. They were painting me as the villain. They were spinning the narrative so fast I was getting whiplash. But it didn't stop at social media. Around 10 a.m., my work email pinged. It was a summons from Human Resources. Urgent, meeting regarding conduct. My stomach dropped. I drove to the law firm where I worked, feeling like a convict walking to the gallows. I had worked at Miller & Associates for 6 years. I was a senior paralegal. I was respected. Or so I thought. When I walked into the HR office, the director, Mrs. Gable, wouldn't even look me in the eye. Sitting next to her was Jessica, a junior paralegal I had mentored, a girl I had taken to lunch just last week. Jessica was looking down at her lap, refusing to meet my gaze. Valery, Mrs. Gable said, sliding a folder across the desk. We received an anonymous ethics complaint this morning. It claims you are using company resources, specifically our surveillance software accounts, to illegally spy on private citizens and create pornographic deepfakes for blackmail. That's a lie. I stood up, my face burning. Mrs. Gable, I am the victim here. My husband and his family are trying to destroy me because I caught them. It doesn't matter, she interrupted, finally looking at me with cold, corporate detachment. The reputation of this firm is paramount. We have clients asking questions. We cannot have a paralegal accused of extortion and drug abuse handling sensitive cases. I looked at Jessica. You know me, Jess. You know I don't do drugs. You know how hard I work. Jessica finally looked up, her eyes wet. I'm sorry, Val. But Dolores, she called me. She sent me screenshots of text messages where you supposedly asked for drugs. I didn't know what to believe. I felt the knife twist in my back. Dolores had faked text messages. She had manufactured an entire digital trail to frame me. She faked them, Jessica. I pleaded. Just like she faked being a decent human being for 30 years. Enough, Mrs. Gable said. Until this is resolved, we are placing you on unpaid administrative leave. Hand over your badge and your laptop. I walked out of the building carrying a box of my personal belongings, a potted succulent, a framed photo of my dog, and my stapler. The winter wind bit at my cheeks, stinging the tears that were finally falling. I had lost my home. I had lost my husband. And now, thanks to their lies, I had lost my income and my professional identity. I sat in my car in the parking lot and cried. Not the polite, silent crying I had done for 5 years to keep the peace in Stuart's house. This was a primal, ugly sobbing that shook my whole body. I slammed my hands against the steering wheel until my palms ached. I felt completely isolated. The world was spinning, and Dolores was controlling the axis. Then, my phone buzzed again. A text from Stuart. Valerie, just sign the NDA Mom's lawyer sent you. Admit the video is fake, and we will drop the complaint at your work. We can even give you a small settlement, $5,000 to get you back on your feet. Don't make this harder on yourself. You can't win against us. We have the community on our side. I stared at the screen. You can't win against us. That sentence. That arrogance. It ignited something in the ashes of my despair. He thought I was weak. He thought that by taking my job and my reputation, he could starve me into submission. He thought the orphan girl would just crawl into a hole and disappear. He forgot one thing. Orphans learn to survive. We learn to fight when no one else is watching. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, smearing mascara across my cheek. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. My eyes were red, my hair was a mess, but my jaw was set. I looked like a woman who had nothing left to lose, and that made me dangerous. Watch me, I whispered to the empty car. I didn't reply to Stuart. Instead, I put the car in gear and drove. Not back to the motel. I drove straight to Linda Thorne's office. I didn't have an appointment, but I marched past the receptionist, ignoring her protests. I burst into Linda's office. She was on the phone, but she stopped when she saw me. I slammed the box of my stuff on her desk. They got me suspended, I told Linda, my voice shaking with rage. They are saying I'm on drugs. They are saying the video is a deep fake. They turned my own mentee against me. Linda hung up the phone without saying goodbye. She looked at me, then at the box, then at the fire in my eyes. A slow, predatory smile spread across her face. Excellent, she said. Excellent? I asked, incredulous. My life is falling apart. I have no income. No, Valerie, Linda said, standing up and smoothing her sharp blazer. They just made a fatal mistake. By claiming the video is a deepfake and accusing you of extortion in a public forum, they have opened themselves up to a defamation lawsuit that will make the divorce settlement look like pocket change. And by getting you suspended? That's tortious interference with a business relationship. She walked over to a whiteboard and uncapped a red marker. She drew a big circle around the names Dolores and Stuart. They wanted a street fight, Linda said, her eyes gleaming. But we are going to give them a nuclear war. Do you still have the financial records you copied from Stuart's laptop while you were cleaning his office last month? The ones you saved to the cloud? Yes, I said. I have everything. Tax returns, bank transfers, credit card statements going back 5 years. Good, Linda said. Because it's time to show the world that Dolores wasn't just sleeping with her son-in-law. She was paying him for it with Stuart's money. Sit down, Valerie. We have work to do. For the next 3 weeks, Linda's office became my war room. I spent more time there than I did at the motel. We dug through thousands of pages of financial documents. It was tedious, soul-crushing work, looking at the mathematical proof of my husband's betrayal. Every transaction was a slap in the face. "Look at this," I said to Linda one afternoon, pointing at a spreadsheet. December 14th. $500 to a luxury spa. I remember that day. Stuart told me he couldn't afford to fix my car's transmission. He said money was tight. But he paid for his mother to get a mud wrap and a massage. "Keep digging," Linda said, sipping her third coffee of the day. "We need the smoking gun that links the money to the affair." And then, we found it. It was buried in a joint account Stuart had with his mother, an account he swore to me was closed years ago. It was hidden under a shell company name, DNS Consulting. Regular transfers. $2,000 here. $3,000 there. All going to an account linked to Travis's failing business, Travis Import-Export. But the memos on the transfers were the key. They weren't labeled business loan or investment. One memo, dated 2 days before a business trip Travis and Dolores took together, simply read, "For our weekend." Another read, "Because you make me happy." "Gotcha," Linda whispered. "This isn't just lending money to family. This is dissipation of marital assets for an illicit purpose." In the eyes of the court, Stuart was funding his mother's affair with community property. While we were building our case, Stuart was trying to break me down. He showed up at the motel one night. I saw him through the peephole. He looked disheveled, holding a bouquet of cheap gas station flowers. "Valerie, please," he called through the door. "I just want to talk. Mom is driving me crazy. I miss your cooking. I miss you." I didn't open the door. I leaned my forehead against the cold wood. "Go away, Stuart. Speak to my lawyer. She's a shark, Val. She's going to ruin us. Just come home. I'll buy you a new car. I'll tell Mom to be nicer. Tell Mom to be nicer." That was the best he could offer. Even now, he couldn't promise to protect me from her. He could only ask the wolf to chew a little softer. "Leave, Stuart, or I'm calling the police," I said. He kicked the door in frustration before walking away. "You're heartless," he yelled. The audacity was almost funny. Finally, the day of the deposition arrived. We weren't in court yet, this was the discovery phase. We met in a sterile, beige conference room at a neutral law firm. Stuart sat on one side of the long mahogany table. He looked terrible. He had lost at least 15 pounds. His suit hung loosely on his frame, and he had dark circles under his eyes that looked like bruises. Next to him was his mother's lawyer, a slick man named Mr. Coburn who smelled of expensive cologne and arrogance. Dolores wasn't there physically. She claimed she was too frail to attend. But she was there on a video call, projected onto a large screen at the end of the room. She lay in her bed, wearing a silk nightgown, looking like a fading movie star trying to garner sympathy. I sat opposite them, with Linda beside me. I wore a sharp navy blue suit I had bought with the last of my credit limit. I held my head high. "My client is willing to offer a generous severance to end this nightmare," Mr. Coburn started, sliding a paper across the table. $10,000. Valerie keeps her car. And in exchange, she signs a statement retracting the video, admitting it was a digitally altered fabrication, and deleting all copies. On the screen, Dolores dabbed at her dry eyes with a handkerchief. "Just take the money, Valerie. Stop hurting this family." Linda didn't even look at the paper. She laughed. A dry, humorless sound that made Mr. Coburn stiffen. "Mr. Coburn, I think you misunderstand the gravity of the situation," Linda said. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of documents. "We aren't here to negotiate for gas money. We are here to discuss the distribution of marital assets, alimony, and damages for the ruin of my client's reputation. The video is fake, Stuart muttered, staring at the table. You know it is, Val. Why are you doing this? Is it? Linda asked. Because we had it analyzed by a forensic digital expert. It's authentic. But we don't even need the video to destroy you, Stuart. We have the bank records. Linda slid a single sheet of paper toward Stuart. This, she pointed, is a bank transfer record from the joint account you share with Valery. $5,000 transferred to Travis's business account on November 12th. And here is the text message log from Dolores's phone, which, thanks to the family data plan Valery was paying for, we have full access to. On November 12th, right after you sent the money, Travis texted Dolores, "Thanks for the payment, babe. Can't wait for tonight." The color drained from Stuart's face. He picked up the paper, his hands shaking violently. On the screen, Dolores sat up straight, forgetting her frail act. Where did you get that? That's private. It's discovery, Dolores, Linda said, looking at the screen. Everything is fair game. She was paying him, I said softly, looking directly at Stuart. Stuart, look at the dates. Look at the amounts. Your mother was using your money, our money, to pay her lover. You were funding the affair that destroyed your sister's marriage and your own. No, Stuart whispered. Mom said, she said it was for the grandkids' college fund. She said Travis was investing it. She lied, I said. Just like she lied about the ring. Just like she lied about me cheating. Just like she lied about loving you. She only loves your checkbook, Stuart. Shut up. Dolores screamed from the screen. Stuart, don't listen to her. She's a snake. But Stuart was reading the text logs. He was seeing the messages where Dolores mocked him. Stuart is such a pushover. I just cry a little and he writes the check. Mr. Coburn tried to intervene. This is circumstantial. It is fraud, Linda cut him off, slamming her hand on the table. And it is marital waste. In this state, if a spouse wastes marital assets on an affair, or in this case, enables a third party to do so, the other spouse is entitled to reimbursement. Plus, we have the defamation claim. The Facebook post. The report to HR. We can drag this out in court, Stuart. We can subpoena your mother to testify in person. We can play that video for a judge. We can put Travis on the stand. Stuart looked like he was going to be sick. He looked at the screen where his mother was screaming silent obscenities, someone had muted her. He looked at the evidence of his life's betrayal. What do you want? Stuart asked, his voice hoarse. We want 60% of the marital assets, including the house, Linda said calmly. We want full alimony for 5 years for the career damage. And we want a public retraction of the statements made to Valery's employer. The house? Stuart gasped. That's my family home. Mom lives there. It was bought during the marriage, Linda reminded him. It's marital property. And frankly, Valery deserves it for the hazard pay of living with your mother. I can't give you the house, Stuart pleaded. Where will Mom go? That's not my problem, I said, my voice steady. She can live with Travis. Oh wait, she can't. He's bankrupt. Stuart put his head in his hands. He realized he was cornered. Fine, Stuart whispered. I'll sign. Stuart, no. Mr. Coburn hissed. We can fight this. Shut up. Stuart snapped at his own lawyer. Look at the texts. She played me. My own mother played me. Just give me the pen. I want it to be over. He signed the papers. He signed away the house, the savings, and his pride. While I was securing my future, the house of Stuart was crumbling into dust. Karma doesn't always strike like a bolt of lightning, sometimes it's a slow-acting poison that rots you from the inside out. It started with the collapse of the other marriage, Travis and Brenda. The video hadn't gone viral in the national sense, but in our small town, the gossip mill was more efficient than the internet. The settlement required confidentiality, but the guests at the Christmas party hadn't signed any NDAs. Aunt Margaret talked to her bridge club. Uncle Raymond told his golf buddies. Soon, everyone in the local business community knew that Travis was sleeping with his mother-in-law. Investors pulled out of his ventures. His credit lines were frozen. He was fired from the board of the local Rotary Club. He became a pariah. Travis didn't handle the humiliation well. Without Dolores's funneling of Stuart's money, he was destitute within months. He spent his days drinking cheap whiskey in his basement, raging at the world, blaming everyone but himself. And Brenda, poor Brenda. She was trapped in that house with a ticking time bomb. She hadn't left immediately because of their son, Leo. Leo had a congenital heart condition and needed expensive medication. Brenda believed she needed Travis's health insurance to keep Leo alive. She didn't know that Travis had stopped paying the premiums months ago to fund his gambling and drinking. The atmosphere in their home became volatile. One night, around 2 a.m., my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Valerie? A whisper. Frantic. Terrified. Who is this? I asked, sitting up in my motel bed. It's Brenda. Please, you have to help me. Brenda? Are you okay? He hit me, she sobbed. Travis. He came home drunk. He found out I was looking for a job. He went crazy. He said if I wasn't so frumpy and useless, he wouldn't have looked at Mom. He threw a bottle, it cut Leo's arm. He hurt Leo? My blood turned to ice. I'm locked in the bathroom with Leo. Travis is outside pounding on the door. He has a gun, Valerie. He keeps saying he's going to end it all. I'm calling 911, I said, already scrambling out of bed. Stay on the line. No! If he hears sirens, he might shoot. Brenda, listen to me. Is there a window in the bathroom? Yes, but it's high. Open it. Get Leo out. Run to the neighbors. I am sending the police right now. Don't argue. I hung up and dialed 911. Then I drove to her house. I knew I shouldn't, I had a restraining order against the family pending, but I couldn't leave her alone. By the time I arrived, the street was lit up with blue and red flashing lights. Police cars surrounded the house. I saw Brenda sitting on the back of an ambulance, wrapped in a blanket, clutching Leo. I ran over to her. He's gone, Brenda whispered, looking at me with hollow eyes. Did they arrest him? No, she shook her head. He took the car. He heard the sirens and ran out the back. He drove off. Travis didn't get far. Drunk, furious, and blinded by his own ego, he sped down the highway. He was driving toward Dolores's house, likely to demand money or blame her for his ruin. He never made it. At 3:30 a.m., Travis swerved to miss a deer, crossed the median, and slammed head-on into a concrete barrier. He survived. But survival is a relative term. He shattered his spine. He was paralyzed from the waist down. The news hit the papers the next morning, local businessmen in DUI crash. Now, Travis was not just broke and disgraced, he was an invalid facing felony charges for domestic battery and DUI. He lay in the hospital bed, strapped to machines, unable to move his legs. And here is the twist of karma, Brenda didn't go to him. For the first time in her life, Brenda found her spine. She served him divorce papers in the ICU. She took Leo and moved into a small apartment, living on disability checks and the charity of friends. "I'm done," she told me later. "I spent 10 years trying to be enough for him. But he didn't want a wife. He wanted a mirror to admire himself in. And when the mirror cracked, he went to my mother. Travis was left alone. Dolores didn't visit him. She was too afraid of the scandal, too selfish to care for a cripple. The lover she had risked everything for was now a burden, so she discarded him like yesterday's trash. Travis ended up in a state-run facility, bitter and alone, screaming at nurses who didn't care about his former glory. If Travis's fall was violent and physical, Dolores's was psychological and slow. It was a rotting of the soul. The defamation lawsuit threat and the financial settlement destroyed her. I now own 60% of the marital assets. Since Stuart couldn't buy me out, the judge ordered the sale of the big family house. The house Dolores had ruled like a queen. The house filled with her expensive furniture, her memories, her power. I was there the day the movers came. I didn't have to be, but I wanted to ensure nothing of mine was accidentally taken. Dolores sat in a lawn chair in the driveway, refusing to help, screaming at the movers. "Be careful with that china cabinet. It's worth more than your life," she shrieked. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her makeup smeared. She spotted me standing by my car. "Are you happy now?" she spat, hobbling over to me. "You took my home. You took my son's money. You are a witch." "I took what was owed to me, Dolores," I said calmly. "And I didn't take your home. Your greed did." "Stuart will hate you forever," she hissed. "He will come back to me. He always does." And she was right, in a way. Stuart did go back to her, but not as a triumph. As a prisoner. Since the house was sold and the money went mostly to me and to pay off debts, Stuart and Dolores were left with almost nothing. Stuart rented a cramped, dingy two-bedroom apartment on the wrong side of town. The walls were thin, the carpet smelled of mildew, and the sirens wailed all night. He had to take Dolores in. He had no choice. She had alienated everyone else. I heard from a mutual friend, Uncle Raymond, who surprisingly called me to apologize for not believing me sooner about their living situation. It sounded like hell on earth. Dolores couldn't handle the loss of status. The church ladies, her primary source of social power, had shunned her after the details of the affair leaked. When she walked into the grocery store, people whispered. They pointed. "That's the woman," they'd say. "The one who slept with her son-in-law." Dolores fractured under the pressure. She became paranoid. She started believing I had planted cameras in the new apartment. She tore the smoke detectors off the ceiling, convinced they were listening devices. She covered the windows with aluminum foil to stop Valerie's spies from looking in. And Stuart. Stuart became her caretaker and her punching bag. He had lost his sales job. Uncle Raymond fired him, citing gross negligence and damage to the company image. Stuart was now working double shifts at an Amazon warehouse, packing boxes for minimum wage. He would come home exhausted, his feet bleeding, only to find Dolores waiting for him. "This food is slop," she would scream, throwing the microwave dinner he brought her onto the floor. "I used to eat steak. Your father provided for me. You are useless, Stuart. Useless just like him." She would wake him up at 3 a.m., screaming that she heard Travis calling her. She demanded expensive medicines for ailments she made up. She drained every cent he earned. One day, I ran into Stuart at a gas station. It had been 6 months since the divorce was finalized. I almost didn't recognize him. He was gaunt, his skin gray. He was driving a rusted Honda Civic. He was putting $5 of gas in the tank, counting pennies from his pocket. He saw me. I was driving my new car, looking healthy, wearing a nice coat. He walked over to me, his steps heavy. "Valerie," he croaked. "You look good." "Hello, Stuart," I said, keeping the car door between us. Mom is getting worse," he said, looking at his shoes. "She thinks you're sending rays through the TV to control her mind. She needs professional help, Stuart." "I can't afford it," he snapped, then his face crumbled. "I can't afford anything. Val, I made a mistake. A huge mistake. I should have picked you. I should have defended you that night." "Yes, you should have," I agreed. Is there any chance?" He looked at me with desperate, wet eyes. "I could leave her. I could put her in a shelter. If you took me back, I would work so hard. I would serve you." I looked at this broken man. Part of me felt pity. But a bigger part felt nothing but relief that I wasn't the one cleaning up his mess anymore. "Stuart," I said gently. "You don't want me. You want a lifeboat. You're drowning, and you want someone to pull you out. But you tied the anchor to your own leg. You chose her. Over and over again. Now you have to live with that choice." I got in my car and drove away. I watched him in the rearview mirror, standing alone at the pump, a man consumed by the mother he couldn't say no to. But I wasn't done. There was one final lesson Stuart needed to learn. He needed to understand that his loyalty to his mother wasn't a virtue. It was a betrayal of the only man who had actually been good in that family, his father, Arthur Miller. I knew I had moved on, but I felt a lingering need to deliver one final blow of truth. Not out of spite, but out of a strange sense of justice for a man I never met, Stuart's father. Throughout my marriage, Stuart always spoke of his father, Arthur, with a mix of reverence and pity. "Dad was a good man," Stuart would say, "but he was weak. He let Mom walk all over him. I won't be like him." The irony was suffocating. Stuart had become exactly the caricature of weakness he despised, while Arthur, I suspected, had a strength Stuart never understood. I remembered Stuart mentioning a man named Mr. Henderson. Dad's old drinking buddy, Stuart had called him dismissively. Some retired history teacher who lives out by the lake. Mom hated him. She wouldn't let him come to the funeral. If Dolores hated him, I knew I would like him. I tracked Mr. Henderson down. He lived in a small, weather-beaten cottage about an hour north of the city. I drove out there on a crisp autumn Tuesday, the leaves turning the color of fire along the highway. I found Mr. Henderson sitting on his porch, whittling a piece of wood. He was in his 70s, with sharp blue eyes and hands that looked like twisted roots. I walked up the driveway, holding a tin of homemade cookies as a peace offering. "Mr. Henderson?" I called out. He looked up, squinting. "I don't buy Girl Scout cookies anymore, sweetheart." "I'm not selling cookies," I said, smiling. "I'm Valerie. Stuart Miller's ex-wife." He stopped whittling. He looked at me for a long moment, measuring me. Then he spat tobacco juice into a can. "The girl who escaped," he said, nodding. "Arthur worried about you. Even though he never met you." "He worried about me?" I asked, confused. "He died before I met Stuart." "Arthur was a seer of sorts," Mr. Henderson said, gesturing for me to sit on the porch swing. "He knew his son. And he knew his wife. He knew that any woman Stuart brought home would be fed into the grinder." We sat and talked for hours. I told him everything. The video. The affair. The way Stuart had raised the belt. Mr. Henderson listened without interrupting. When I finished, he didn't look shocked. He looked deeply sad. "Dolores is a black hole," he said. "She swallows light. Arthur was a good man, but he was trapped. He stayed for the boy. He thought he could protect Stuart if he stayed. He failed, I said bitterly. Stuart is just like her. No, Mr. Henderson said sharply. Stuart is weak because he was trained to be weak. But Arthur fought back in his own way. He left a failsafe. Mr. Henderson stood up and went into the house. He returned with a leather-bound journal. It was old, the cover cracked, smelling of pipe tobacco. What is that? Arthur's diary, Mr. Henderson said. From the last 2 years of his life. Dolores thinks she burned everything of his, but Arthur gave this to me a week before his heart attack. He said, Robert, keep this. Give it to my son when he's ready to be a man. Or when he hits rock bottom. He handed me the book. I think he's hit rock bottom, wouldn't you say? I opened the book. The handwriting was cramped and jagged. I read a random entry. September 12th, Dolores threatened me again today. She said if I didn't sign over the lake property to her name, she would tell Stuart I wasn't his father. It's a lie, of course. I know the boy is mine. But she knows how to twist the knife. She knows I stay only for him. I look at Stuart and I see him fading. She's eating him alive, just like she ate me. God, forgive me for not being strong enough to leave. I gasped. She blackmailed him? Her own husband? Every day, Mr. Henderson said. She threatened to ruin his reputation at the school. She threatened to turn Stuart against him. Arthur stayed to be a shield. He took the abuse so Stuart wouldn't have to. But he failed to teach Stuart how to fight. Mr. Henderson, I said, clutching the book. Stuart needs to read this. He needs to know that his loyalty to his mother is spitting on his father's sacrifice. He won't listen to you, Mr. Henderson said. No. But he will listen to you. And he will listen to his father. We hatched a plan. The anniversary of Arthur's death was next week. Stuart always went to the grave. It was the one ritual he never missed, perhaps out of guilt. I'll meet him there, Mr. Henderson said. It's time the boy grew up. The cemetery was a sprawling, melancholic place on the edge of town. On the day of the anniversary, the sky was a bruised purple, heavy with rain that hadn't fallen yet. The air was thick and cold. I parked my car far away, behind a row of ancient oak trees. I needed to see this, but I couldn't be part of it. This was between a father, a son, and the truth. I watched through my windshield as Stuart's rusted Honda sputtered into the lot. He got out, wearing a cheap black raincoat that was too big for him. He looked like a ghost. He carried a single, wilted rose. He walked to the headstone and stood there, head bowed. I could see his shoulders shaking. He was talking to the stone. Probably apologizing. Probably asking for guidance he didn't know how to receive. Then, Mr. Henderson arrived. He parked his truck and walked slowly up the hill, leaning on his cane. I rolled down my window slightly to hear, though the wind carried their voices away. I saw Stuart jump when he saw Mr. Henderson. He looked defensive, probably expecting a lecture. Mr. Henderson didn't lecture. He simply stood beside Stuart and looked at the grave. Then, he reached into his coat and pulled out the leather journal. He held it out to Stuart. Stuart hesitated. He looked at the book, then at Mr. Henderson. He took it. From my distance, I watched Stuart open the cover. He stood there for a long time. He didn't move. It was as if he had turned to stone. He was reading the first page. Then he flipped to the middle. Then the end. Suddenly, Stuart's legs gave out. He didn't sit, he collapsed. He fell onto the wet grass right on top of his father's grave, clutching the book to his chest. A wail rose up from the cemetery. It was a sound so raw, so full of agony, that it made the birds fly from the trees. It was the sound of a man realizing his entire life had been a lie. He was reading about how his mother, the woman he sacrificed his marriage for, had tormented the father he loved. He was reading his father's prayers that Stuart would escape. Don't let her make you a monster, son. Don't let her coldness freeze your heart. Find a good woman and hold on to her. Stuart had found a good woman. And he had thrown her away to please the monster. I watched as Stuart curled into a fetal position, sobbing into the dirt. Mr. Henderson knelt beside him, placing a hand on his heaving back. It was a scene of biblical sorrow. My phone buzzed. I looked down. It was a text from Stuart. He must have typed it through his tears. Stuart, I'm reading it. I'm reading what she did to him. God, Valery. I am so sorry. I'm sorry. I stared at the screen. For 5 years, I had waited for an apology. I had craved it. But now that I had it, I realized it didn't change anything for me. It didn't fix the past. But maybe, just maybe, it would save Stuart's future. I watched for another 10 minutes. Then, Stuart stood up. He wiped his face with his sleeve. He hugged Mr. Henderson, a desperate, clinging hug of a drowning man finding a raft. Stuart walked back to his car. He moved differently. The slump was gone. He walked with a heavy, grim determination. He didn't go back to the apartment to make Dolores dinner. I learned later what happened that night. Stuart drove straight to the apartment. He walked in, ignored Dolores' screaming about his lateness, and packed her bags. "What are you doing?" she had shrieked. "Put that down." "We are leaving, Mother," Stuart said, his voice dead calm. "Where are we going?" "To a place where you can't hurt anyone anymore." He drove her to a state-run assisted living facility. It wasn't a luxury home. It was a gray, concrete building with fluorescent lights and the smell of bleach. It was clean, it was safe, but it was not the palace Dolores thought she deserved. He checked her in. He had power of attorney now, thanks to her mental decline. "You can't leave me here," Dolores screamed, clinging to his arm. "I am your mother. I gave you life." Stuart looked at her. Really looked at her. He saw the manipulation, the cruelty, the emptiness. "You gave me life," Stuart said. "And then you spent 30 years trying to eat it. Goodbye, Mom." He walked out the sliding glass doors. He sat in his car and cried for an hour. And then, he drove away. He never brought her back home. While Stuart was exorcising his demons, I was busy building a heaven. 2 years passed. The trauma of the divorce, the legal battles, and the public scandal had faded into scars, visible, but no longer bleeding. I used my settlement money wisely. I didn't buy a fancy car or go on a world tour. I invested in myself. I went back to school to get my certification in forensic accounting, ironic, considering how I spent my divorce proceedings. I realized I had a knack for finding hidden truths in numbers. I opened a small firm, Phoenix Financial. It was just me and a laptop at first, helping women going through divorces find the money their husbands were hiding. It was satisfying work. I was the champion I wished I had back then. I also started baking again. Not for duty, but for joy. I rented a small commercial kitchen on weekends and sold sourdough at the farmer's market. It was there, amidst the smell of fresh bread and rain-dampened pavement, that I met Garrett. It was a rainy Saturday. The market was empty. I was packing up my unsold loaves, feeling a bit discouraged. A man in a trench coat ran up to my stall, breathless. He had salt and pepper hair, kind eyes, and wet glasses. "Please tell me you have a baguette left," he said. I promised my daughter French toast, and I burned the store-bought bread. I laughed. I have one left. But it's a sourdough baguette. Is that okay? That is better than okay. That is a lifesaver. He bought the bread. He tipped me $20 on a $5 loaf. I'm Garrett, he said. Valerie. He came back the next week. And the next. We talked about bread. Then about the weather. Then about life. Garrett was an architect. He was 55, divorced, with a teenage daughter. His wife had left him for a younger man, taking half his business. He didn't speak of her with rage, but with a quiet, resigned sadness. It hurt, he told me over coffee one day. But it taught me that I can survive alone. And it taught me to value kindness over excitement. Kindness. That word struck me. Stuart had been exciting in the beginning. Dolores was exciting in a terrifying way. But kindness? That was water in a desert. We started dating. It was a slow burn. I was terrified. The first time he raised his voice, he was shouting at a football game on TV. I flinched and dropped a glass. Garrett turned off the TV immediately. He saw my shaking hands. He didn't tell me to calm down. He didn't get annoyed. He walked over, avoided the broken glass, and knelt in front of me. I'm sorry, he said softly. I got too loud. Are you okay? I thought. I couldn't finish the sentence. I know, he said. I'm not him, Valerie. I will never be him. He cleaned up the glass. He made me tea. He held me while I cried out the last remnants of my fear. Garrett healed parts of me I didn't know were broken. He encouraged my business. He bragged about me to his friends. He invited me to dinner with his daughter, Maya, and treated me like a partner, not a prop. One evening, 2 years after we met, Garrett took me to the plot of land where he was building a house. I designed it, he said, unrolling a blueprint on the hood of his truck. Big kitchen for you. A home office with a view. And a guest room for Maya. He looked at me. But the blueprints are useless if you aren't in them. Build this with me, Val? He pulled out a ring. It wasn't a massive diamond like the one Dolores had accused me of stealing. It was a simple sapphire, the color of the ocean. Yes, I said. We got married in the frame of the unfinished house, under the open sky. No drama. No screaming. Just peace. The past is a ghost. It can't hurt you, but sometimes it floats through the walls to remind you it's there. For years after the Christmas Eve massacre, I was at the city hospital. Garrett had twisted his ankle on a construction site, and I was waiting for his x-rays. I walked to the cafeteria to get coffee. As I passed the pediatric waiting room, I saw her. Brenda. She looked older. Her hair was gray, pulled back in a severe bun. She was knitting, her needles clicking rhythmically, but her eyes were fixed on the swinging doors of the ICU. I hesitated. I could keep walking. I owed her nothing. But I remembered the phone call. I remembered her saving Leo from Travis. Brenda? She looked up. It took her a moment to place me. I was wearing a cashmere coat, my hair cut in a stylish bob. I looked nothing like the frantic woman in the motel. Valerie, she whispered. She stood up, dropping her knitting. How are you? I asked. Her face crumbled. It's Leo. His heart, he needs another valve replacement. We've been here for 3 weeks. It's hard. And Travis? He died last year, she said flatly. Infection from the bedsores. He died alone. I'm sorry. Don't be, she said. It was a relief. She looked at me, tears filling her eyes. You look happy, Val. I am. I'm glad. Listen. I never said it properly. Thank you. For calling the police that night. You saved us. And. I'm sorry. For everything before that. I was a coward. We were all surviving, Brenda, I said gently. You're free now? I am, she nodded. I'm broke, tired, and scared. But I'm free. I haven't spoken to Mom in 3 years. Stuart calls sometimes, but he sounds hollow. We hugged. It was a stiff, awkward hug, but it was closure. I left the hospital, but before I went to Garrett, I stopped at the billing desk. I'd like to make a payment on a patient's account, I said. Leo Miller. I paid the balance of his surgery deductible. It was $5,000. The exact amount Stuart had transferred to Travis all those years ago. I didn't leave my name. It was my final severance package from the Miller family. A few months later, the final encounter happened. Garrett and I were at the supermarket, buying steaks for a barbecue. We were laughing, holding hands. We turned down the cereal aisle. A man was stocking shelves, wearing a green vest. He moved slowly, like an old man. He turned. It was Stuart. He looked 10 years older than his age. His hair was thinning. His eyes were dull. He saw me. He froze, a box of cornflakes in his hand. He looked at me, radiant, happy, loved. Then he looked at Garrett, who was standing protectively beside me, looking strong and kind. Stuart took a half step forward. I saw his lips form my name. I saw a flash of hope in his eyes. Maybe he wanted to say hello, maybe he wanted forgiveness, maybe he just wanted to be acknowledged. I didn't look away. I looked him right in the eye. But I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I looked at him with the polite indifference you give a stranger. Then, I turned to Garrett. Honey, let's get the Honey Nut Cheerios. Garrett, sensing something, squeezed my hand. Okay, love. We walked past Stuart. I felt his gaze burning into my back. But he didn't say a word. He knew he had lost the right to speak to me. He turned back to his shelf, stacking boxes, a prisoner of the mediocre life he had chosen. As we walked away, I realized something. On Stuart's finger, there was a ring. Not a wedding ring. It was a cheap, gold signet ring. I recognized it. It was the ring Dolores had bought for Travis years ago. The one she gave him on the birthday that sparked my suspicion. Stuart was wearing his dead brother-in-law's ring. The ring his mother gave her lover. He hadn't just taken care of Dolores. He had absorbed her sickness. By wearing that ring, he was trying to be the man his mother loved. Even with her gone, even with Travis dead, Stuart was still trying to be the favorite. A chill went down my spine. I realized that some people can't be saved. They are so entangled in the web of toxicity that they fall in love with the spider. I walked out of that store and into the sunshine, breathing in the fresh air. I squeezed Garrett's hand tight. You okay? Garrett asked. I'm perfect, I said. And I meant it. So, that is my story. I went from being an orphan desperate for a family to a woman who realized that blood doesn't make a family, love, respect, and safety do. I shared this journey with you, the humiliation of the belt, the shock of the video, the battle in the boardroom, and the peace in the garden, because I know I am not alone. I know there are women listening to this right now who are holding their breath. Maybe you are walking on eggshells in your own kitchen because your husband's mood shifts like the wind. Maybe you are biting your tongue when your mother-in-law insults your parenting or your cooking. Maybe you are handing over your paycheck to a partner who controls the money but takes no responsibility. You tell yourself it's for peace. You tell yourself it's for better or for worse. You tell yourself that if you just love them enough, if you just try harder, they will change. I am here to tell you, they won't. The belt doesn't have to be made of leather to hurt you. Silence hurts. Neglect hurts. Financial control hurts. Gaslighting hurts. Don't wait until you are threatened on Christmas Eve. Don't wait until they steal your dignity and your identity. You have a strength inside you that you don't even know about. It's sleeping, buried under years of compromise, but it's there. Wake it up. Set your boundaries. If something feels wrong, it is wrong. Document the truth. Save the texts. Copy the files. Protect yourself, because no one else will. And if you have to walk away with your head high. It will be scary. The first night in that motel was the loneliest night of my life. I thought I was going to die of grief. But I didn't. I woke up. And I built a life that was mine. You deserve a love that doesn't ask you to kneel. You deserve a partner who stands beside you, not behind his mother. You deserve to be safe. My name is Valery. I was a victim. I was a scapegoat. Now, I am a victor. I am a business owner. I am a wife to a good man. And you? You are a queen. Don't let anyone treat you like a servant in your own castle. Thank you for listening to my story. If this touched you, if you saw a piece of yourself in my journey, please share it. Share it with a sister, a friend, or anyone who needs to hear it. You never know whose life you might change. And remember, the best revenge isn't nasty. It isn't loud. The best revenge is living a happy, successful, peaceful life that they can't touch. Take care of yourselves, ladies. You are worth fighting for. And if you've made it this far, please like this video and subscribe. Leave a comment below telling me your story. I read them all, and I am rooting for every single one of you. Goodbye for now. As the story closes, we are left with a powerful reminder of the strength that lies within us all. Valery's journey is not just about escaping toxicity or reclaiming her dignity, it's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Her courage to rise above betrayal, manipulation, and abuse is a beacon of hope for anyone who feels trapped in the shadows of their own life. It teaches us that we are not defined by the cruelty of others, but by the choices we make to protect our peace and rebuild ourselves. This story also highlights the importance of knowing your worth and setting boundaries. Valery's refusal to accept mistreatment, even at the cost of losing everything familiar, is a lesson in self-respect. It reminds us that walking away from what harms us is not weakness, it's the ultimate act of strength. Her ability to transform pain into purpose shows us that even in the darkest times, there is light waiting to be found. Let this story inspire you to reflect on your own life. What boundaries have you set to protect your happiness? How have you faced adversity and grown stronger? Share your thoughts below or simply comment good if this lesson resonated with you. Together, we can learn, grow, and support one another in finding the freedom and peace we all deserve.